Ines, what is the latest on Andrew's arrest and what's been the reaction across London?
Yeah, Alex, so we know that police are now searching his other properties in Berkshire, in Norfolk. This comes after British police were seen at his estate in Sandringham, where we believe he was arrested. Police did put out a statement earlier today. They didn't actually name Andrew, which is typical for UK police, but they did say they had arrested a man in his 60s and that he remained in custody. And this comes after Thames Valley Police had announced a few days ago that they had opened up an investigation into claims that Andrew may have leaked confidential information to Epstein while he was trade envoy for the UK. In terms of what's next for Andrew, so the big question is how long will police detain him, whether they will keep him overnight. We, assume that at the moment he's being questioned by detectives. And then one of three things could happen. So he could be charged with a criminal offense. He could be let go while the investigation continues, or police could decide to take no further action. So we'll see what happens there. We also got a remarkable statement from the King, his brother, earlier today, who basically said that he was, going to be cooperating with law enforcement officials. That's what we've heard from them clearly in the past. I'll let you, I'm going to read just some comments he made in his statement. So he says, "Let me state clearly, the law must take its course." He says, "I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office. What now follows is the full, fair and proper process by which this issue is investigated." And of course, King Charles had previously stripped Andrew of his royal titles over his ties to Epstein. He also evicted him from the royal residence. So clearly putting distance there between himself and his brother.
Yeah, very clearly. All right. So, Lisa, what is Andrew accused of doing? And let's remind our viewers, it's not of anything of a sexual nature. Is it related to his trade position?
It is. It's essentially related to abuse of his power while in office as the UK trade envoy. Alex, the Epstein files themselves reveal that while Andrew was serving as the UK trade envoy, he obtained what appears to be confidential proprietary information belonging to the UK government and then promptly shared it with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to read to you from one such document in the files where an aide to His Royal Highness, the Duke of York, is forwarding him some visit reports for Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Shenzhen in relation to your recent visit to Southeast Asia. And then what does the Duke of York then do? He promptly sends them without comment on November 30th, 2010 to jevacation@gmail.com, which for readers of the Epstein files, they know that is an email that Jeffrey Epstein most commonly used in his personal correspondence. That seems to be the crux of what the investigation is into Prince Andrew at this point in time and what the charges against him might sound in.
Okay. We do know, Lisa, that this morning Virginia Giuffre's family, they released a statement and they said, here's the quote, "Our broken hearts have been lifted at the news that no one is above the law, not even royalty." Of course, Giuffre had alleged in documents in court that she was forced to have sex with Andrew several times, in fact. That is not, again, what he has been charged with today. But could this further prompt charges as everything about him now will be investigated more thoroughly?
I'm assuming that you're asking me whether he could also face charges in the U.S. connected to his sexual abuse or the alleged sexual abuse of Virginia Giuffre. I want to say a couple of things. One is the Southern District of New York, that's the Manhattan Federal Prosecutorial Office, looked into that question about Andrew's involvement and Jeffrey Epstein's predation in 2019, in 2020. They made what I would call pretty Herculean efforts to try and interview Prince Andrew, who then stood behind lawyers and essentially said, "I'm not going to come in for an interview with you. I'll answer written questions." And at that point, the prosecutors tried to get what's called a mutual legal assistance treaty invoked so that the UK and the US would have to cooperate with each other. That doesn't seem to have come to fruition, in part because it sparked some diplomatic tension at the time. Now, could this Department of Justice re-examine those things? Possibly, but remember, the lead witness here to the only existing charge of sexual misconduct against Prince Andrew was Virginia Giuffre, who is now deceased. And at the time, one of the things that SDNY prosecutors put in paper, including in a prosecution memo that was part of the Epstein files before it was taken down, is some real questions about her credibility as a witness, given that some of the things she said she witnessed other people participating in with respect to other men were countered by those victim witnesses in their own respect. And so they would have to develop substantially more evidence of sexual misconduct by Prince Andrew involving other people, I believe, to hold him criminally accountable in the United States for that.
Totally hypothetical question.
Yeah.
We have seen him in 2 photos leaning over,
Yes.
lying over a woman whose face is blacked out. If that face were identified to not be Virginia Giuffre, could investigators go to that person and then start asking questions?
Absolutely. And the other thing that I should mention is when I talk to survivors, I frequently hear from people that at the time that they were first interviewed by federal prosecutors, particularly women who were involved in the first Florida investigation, they weren't as honest as they wish they had been at the time because they were afraid of the still very much alive, very powerful Jeffrey Epstein and his network of influence and money. There are many survivors who have said to me, there are things I would say to the Department of Justice if I just had an audience with them now, and perhaps the woman that we've seen in that photograph where Andrew is leaning over her, if she is not, in fact, Virginia Giuffre and is another survivor, she may be among the people who has something more to say and has reconsidered what she wants to say at this point in time with Jeffrey Epstein, now deceased, and Ghislaine Maxwell in prison.
So, Peter, could Andrew's arrest have a ripple effect here? Could it increase pressure to bring actual charges against Epstein's associates here in the U.S.?
Well, I mean, look, obviously what you see here with these files that have come out is sort of like a one-stop Me Too movement all at once, right? This has had so many tentacles in so many different places. So a lot of people have started to pay a price, not through criminal charges necessarily, but losing their jobs, having to sell their business from California to Norway. You're seeing a remarkable, set of consequences. Whether it pushes for more criminal investigation's a different thing. I mean, a lot of the things that people are being fired for or criticized for or held up to ridicule for are, dishonorable conduct, but maybe not necessarily criminal, right? And I think that the question is, does this move to that next level? Is there something in these files that investigators who have the power to prosecute could turn into something more? Presumably, this has already been looked at by the Justice Department, and the things that were released did not lead, obviously, that we know of, to any kind of criminal prosecution beyond Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell. But I think that the question a lot of people want to know is there more that could be brought to court?
Well, that would also have to prove that there had been very robust investigations as well. But, Ed, you have written about what you call the Epstein rot, and note that Epstein's network is like a, quote, MRI of the establishment. But in places like the UK, Sweden, Norway, the backlash to Epstein's associates has been significantly more harsh than here in the United States. Why is that?
So I think partly because the 2 particular cases in Britain, Prince Andrew, there's been so much knowledge of this and aired for so many years, and he's shown such disregard for even answering questions on this until that famous BBC interview in 2019, and then clearly lied, that the patience, tolerance, whatever sort of forbearance the British public have for the royal family in this particular case just snapped. There is another pending case, which today's police arrest point towards, and that's Peter Mandelson. Lord Mandelson was the British ambassador here in Washington until last September. He was fired by Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, when similar kinds of trading financial insider financial information to Epstein surfaced in a previous data dump. So there has just been there's been a lot of British drip coverage of this. As to the United States, well, I mean, I think Peter and Lisa, made very good points about victims being intimidated from coming forward and Department of Justice previous investigations. But quite clearly, and we all know this, whether we're in America or outside of America, this Department of Justice under Pam Bondi, Donald Trump's Attorney General, has no appetite whatsoever for any investigations into Epstein or indeed any further release of information. So I suspect Andrew's arrest is going to refocus the spotlight on this DOJ.
Peter, Ed mentions Keir Starmer, and I want to play what we heard from the UK Prime Minister, who's been under some pressure to step down just for appointing someone linked to Epstein. Compare that to what we heard from President Trump, whose name is referenced in the files thousands of times. Take a listen.
Anybody who's got information relating to any aspect of violence against women and girls has, in my view, a duty to come forward, whoever they are. One of the core principles in our system is that everybody is equal under the law and nobody is above the law. And it is really important that that is applied across the board.
I have nothing to hide. I've been exonerated. I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. They went in hoping that they'd find it and found just the opposite. I've been totally exonerated. And I've been totally exonerated. I've been totally exonerated on Epstein.
Let's compare the statements. What do people make of what we've heard from Trump when compared to other leaders like what we just heard from Keir Starmer?
Yeah, look, Trump is going to claim he's exonerated on no matter what allegations ever brought against him ever on anything, right? He said that he was totally exonerated on things that he was actually not exonerated on. It's a kind of a meaningless phrase. It's true that we haven't found, I think, anything in these documents suggesting criminal activity by President Trump. That's true. But it's also a reminder of just how close he really was with Jeffrey Epstein for an awful long time. There's a account of a conversation that the president, not then the president, had with the police chief down in Florida after Epstein was targeted, saying, "I'm glad you're doing this. Everybody knows he's been doing this," which, of course, contradicts some of the things that he has said publicly since then about what his state of knowledge was. And he shows up so many times in these files in so many different ways in terms of the intimacy of the relationship for so many years before they did finally have a falling out, that it's hard to imagine that he's the only person, it seems like, who's not paying any kind of a price. There's no kind of political consequence or anything like that. That's the nature of our politics right now.